So I wanted to do a little impromptu video before I went on my traveling excursion about multilingual learners and what keeps them engaged and what keeps them, what their interests are. So what I would do before you start teaching anything, it could be a novel, could be a play, could be a grammar lesson, whatever it is, vocabulary, ask them what they're interested in. Do a little Google survey or just a question. Just ask them, write down anything that interests them, and then build your unit around that. So, for example, if they are interested, if you're teaching them Romeo and Juliet, it takes place in Italy. Soccer is big in Italy. So if they're interested in sports and they say soccer, you can have them do a little book report on soccer, the history of soccer in Italy. Um, if their interest is food, I'm a big foodie. I love food. So, that would be a great topic, you know, for them and for you to read, right? When you get to start reading uh, and grading. But if their interest is in food, you can have them do a little book report on Italian food, desserts. Italian. I love dessert. Have a sweet tooth, so and have them explore that, and what Italian food and desserts were like. Maybe back in the time that Romeo and Juliet took place, or even today. If their interest is in, wardrobe or clothing, you can have them do a little book report on the clothing back in those times, or the wardrobe that people wore back in Romeo and Juliet's times. If they're interested in drawing, you can have them do a little book report on art. So the point is that you're getting them engaged in something that is academic, and that is interesting, and then you can start teaching them, getting them interested, and then revolve your whole unit or lessons around that. And then that way, you kind of got them hooked in, and you made them a little bit more curious about the Italian culture and the Italian sort of life, right? We're talking about Romeo and Juliet. They're in love with each other. They eventually, they want to get married. They want to be together. You can have them do a little research on marriages in the Italian culture, and then you can sort of get into how these characters behave with regards to that history, and then get into teach them the vocabulary. Have them do research on the vocabulary words that are involved in the play. Through their interests. Maybe you can have them give them the vocabulary, have them use those vocabulary words in a different sort of writing activity, that involves art, that involves the art of the play that's involved in the play. You can have them do, you can do as it can go multiple ways with this. But the most important thing is to find out what they're interested in, and then revolve your unit around that. Social media, they love to look at social media. So you can ask them, what interests them, what do they like to watch on social media. Of course, make sure it's appropriate. That's what engages them. Most of the time, my experience has been they like that, funny things, just things that are funny, and that keeps them engaged. Things that make them laugh. Things. So it is whatever you can do to, keep them focused on, the content and things that interest them, and then you just have to sort of marry those two, right? What interests them and the content that you have to teach. Of course, all standards based, appropriate, and in an engaging kind of a way. So that's just a little bit of my commentary on that. I think with like multilingual learners too, you have to remember that there is that language barrier sometimes. So you can have them draw pictures of how they imagine Romeo and Juliet to be. They can do a character sketch. Or they can do, they can draw pictures of, the type of homes that they had back then. Or you can have them translate some of the play in their language using Google Translate, or you can translate the play into their language with Google Translate or one of those translation tools. That way it's more accessible to them, right? It's not as difficult for them to understand. And then maybe you can have them do a little activity where they're comparing and contrasting the Italian culture with their own culture. For any student, you can do this with anybody, and so you can kind of do those things within your own, within your own sort of units, and then you take your own ideas and include it in there. But I think it's very important to keep students engaged with topics that they're interested in. All students. I know with me, I just became, interested in sort of true crime stuff. So now I started reading, and the law. So now I start reading a bunch of thriller books, and I find it interesting. So those are just, some things that you can sort of help them with, and have some fun with it. Anyway, thank you very much. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's always this is so much fun. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for those of you who are viewing my content. I really appreciate that. If you're interested in the stuff that I post, please, like and subscribe. I have a ton of things that I want to do with this channel. So anyway, have a wonderful day.